Right, so let me finish. Let me finish what I was trying to say earlier. Let me finish what I was trying to say earlier. What we've seen is the collapse of Dawa. Again, Ali Dawa has said that Zakir Naik is wrong for using scientific miracles in the Quran as if it's a proof of the Quran. He said it recently, just in the last month, just a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. Now the point is, he's therefore admitted that Islam has been pushed forward on a false basis.
Nice.
You know, and by pushing it forward on a false basis, he's admitted that there are Muslims who become Muslims on a false pretext.
That's right. Well done, Borat.
So if you're one of those Muslims who embraced Islam on a false pretext, like the fake miracles in the Quran, I simply invite you now to leave Islam. You were conned by a con artist.
Borat.
You were conned by a con artist.
Thank you, Allah.
And that con artist has duped you. But here's another thing. If they were pushing Islam with scientific arguments that were not true, what other arguments have they pushed Islam by that are also not true? If Ali Dawa is admitting that scientific miracles were a false claim, a debunked argument, a bad argument, what other bad, false, duped arguments have they advanced Islam with? Ladies and gentlemen, there are many black Muslims who became Muslim because they were told lies about the Christian slave trade. And they were told lies about the Islamic slave trade. If you're one of those Muslims, it's time to leave Islam.
Leave it!
If you're a Muslim who became a Muslim because of a scientific miracle, it's time to leave Islam.
Leave it!
If you're someone who became a Muslim because someone convinced you that the Bible doesn't show that Jesus Christ is God, and you believe them, that's a false argument. It's time to leave Islam.
Leave it!
The car salesmen of the Islamic community have been selling dodgy cars to the Muslim community, and they've been selling dodgy cars to naive Christians and others in our culture and our society. But because of Christians like me and like Paperboy,
Chris,
and like Chris,
David Woods,
and David Woods, thank you, and Jay Smith, and many others, these kinds of arguments have been busted. Islam has been put to scrutiny in a way that it has never been put to scrutiny before. Islam has been put to scrutiny in a way that it has never been put before. And it is collapsing under that scrutiny. Christians have been subject to scrutiny on every aspect of our faith for 300 years.
How long?
300 years. And the central message of the Christian faith has stood the test of all the criticisms. What is that central message of the Christian faith? That Christ was crucified, that Christ rose from the dead, and that Christ is coming again. There is sufficient, strong, empirical evidence to justify the belief that Jesus Christ was a real person, to believe that he died on a cross, to believe that he proclaimed himself as the Messiah, to believe that he rose from the dead on the third day. And ladies and gentlemen, if Jesus Christ rose from the dead, then that's it. It's game over.
Finito.
Every other religion is false. Every other religion or worldview does not matter. Because if the resurrection is true, then that means that Christianity is true, and it is game over for every other ideology and every other belief system, whether it's Nazism, communism, progressive politics, liberal politics, Islam, Sikhism, Buddhism, Judaism, atheism, agnosticism. If Jesus Christ rose from the dead, the argument is finished. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the proposition that Christianity stands or falls by.
Right.
And despite the best efforts of liberal critics, of Muslim critics, of atheist critics, of agnostic critics, none of them have been able to disprove the Christian belief in the resurrection. None of them have been able to come up with a counter theory or a counter hypothesis that disproves the Christian faith.
Right.
On the contrary, critic after critic after critic have admitted that something happened to convince the first Christians that indeed Jesus Christ had risen from the dead. They don't say what it was. They don't agree that it was that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. But even the critics of the Christian faith agree that 2,000 years ago, a group of people who knew that their Messiah had died, had risen from the dead, and something happened to convince them of that fact. They can't explain the experience, but they don't deny the experience. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Thank you, Borat. You fraud.
Any questions on the Christian faith? Our beliefs, our values, our customs, our history, our traditions.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Off camera?
Yeah.
Can I ask, do you believe that there could be like non-blameworthy non-Christians, people that will look at the evidence you cited and just be like unconvinced by it?
Yes.
What are they thinking?
So, ladies and gentlemen, the question was, is there such a thing as unblameworthy non-Christians, i.e. Christians who look at the evidence and then honestly come to the conclusion that it did not occur? I would like to see the person that does that with any integrity. Because, ladies and gentlemen, there are 12 undeniable, indisputable points in the historical record that exist in the first century that point to the idea of the resurrection. I'll list some of them. Number one, Jesus Christ was crucified. You can't have a resurrection without a death. Let me answer his question, then I'll take yours, madam. That the first Christians believed that he had risen from the dead. That both of these events occurred in Jerusalem. That competing theories against the resurrection did not deny the empty tomb, but simply tried to explain the empty tomb away. That there was an empty tomb. That the Christians who experienced this resurrection event were transformed by it so much that as Jews they began to celebrate the Sunday as a special day, despite the fact there's no reason in Judaism to do it, because the resurrection occurred on a Sunday. Their testimony to the bodily resurrection of Christ. People who look at the evidence must either come up with an explanatory theory that accounts for all the evidence, or you should follow the evidence to where it leads. Every human being has a responsibility to follow the truth, to stand on the truth. And the way that we know the truth is by following the evidence. And the evidence points to the reality of the resurrection. So if someone honestly looks at that evidence, I am convinced that an honest person would believe in the resurrection. And that those that don't either haven't looked or haven't looked sincerely.